the scene shortly after the incident took place. We're now hearing that it's 3 people who have been killed, not 2. What's the latest?
So as you mentioned, we got there yesterday, in the early hours of this morning, just past 1 o'clock. We had seen tweets of people saying that shots had been fired and doctors were needed. We were actually out at Charlotte Maxeke at the casualties there. And when we got there, it was quite a chaotic scene. We saw, ambulances, police, all just converged on that area. 2 people had already been confirmed dead on the scene at that time. Their bodies were outside of the popular restaurant. Bodies were still being brought out from inside the restaurant because the shots were fired into the restaurant. Most of them were highly critical. We know 2 were very critical. We have unconfirmed reports of a 3rd. So far, police as well as the health department and emergency services have not confirmed that death, but we did know that 2 were in a critical condition yesterday or this morning when they were brought into hospital, and the other 4 were also severely injured.
Okay. There are also reports that this drive-by shooting is not a random incident. Somebody allegedly had an argument inside one of those restaurants, left, went to their car, and came back and shot into the crowd.
That's basically the eyewitness accounts that we've got. Many of them telling us, it was just past midnight. Everyone was celebrating coming into 2020, quite happy, quite jubilant. And when those first 2 shots went off, many still thought that it was firecrackers. Some, the one that eyewitness that we spoke to, that we heard earlier, they said they'd just come from home. They said, let's just go out. We're still, quite in a jovial mood. Let's just go out. And as they drove into Melville and parked, they heard those shots and then just saw people falling and heard screams. So as you said, not a random act. It was an argument that took place. Many didn't even realize that this argument had happened. One eyewitness that we spoke to said he had parked his car not very far from where the incident happened. He had been in another restaurant further down, and when he got back to his car, he realized that this whole incident had occurred. So a lot of chaos, a lot of uncertainty at that time when it happened, because people just didn't know what was going on. It was so something you don't expect to happen when you're going out and just to enjoy your New Year's Eve.
One of the tweets I saw on that matter was from Ursula Chigane, who said that she couldn't get hold of police, which is very worrying, and then speaking about how private security had to be called in. We saw later on that police did come in. Do you know how far police are with establishing the identity of this shooter and making sure that he or she is brought to book for what took place?
From what we understand, it did take a little while, but when we got there, not 40 minutes in, there was a huge contingent of police, armed police as well as private security, as well as multiple ambulance services that had already been on the scene by about 1:40 in the morning. What we do understand is police are investigating. They are calling for information. They were speaking to a lot of eyewitnesses, but remember when that incident happened, some had just left. Some just literally got into their cars and drove off or tried to get away. Uber drivers that I'd spoken to later in the evening had said that they were getting calls from people just to pick them up and to get them out of that area, because people weren't sure whether the shooter will come back, whether this was just one attack, whether there'll be retaliation. It was unsure what will happen after this, so many just dispersed. When we got there, most of the restaurants were either closed up or people were just holed up into those into the rooms itself. Many had already left. The road cleared out and became an active crime scene, so police had cordoned off the area already.
Sounds like a very chaotic, scary experience for everyone who was there and everyone who was involved. Do we know what next from the owners of those restaurants? Because there's a very tragic, very real thing of people getting injured, and that's very tangible. And then there's businesses closing on a night when they have perhaps stayed open very late, made a lot of money, and people perhaps won't be so keen to go back to those spots in Melville because they want to be safe when they go out. They don't want incidents like that.
When we spoke to eyewitnesses, some had said that this was not the first time this has happened. Melville, since October, has been having some kind of shootings every few weeks or months, and it was something that was quite common in this area, and that they've been telling the police and they've been asking. We do know that we are waiting on the restaurant owners. They are going to be sending out a press release later on today on the way forward from their side as well, and as you mentioned, it's quite hard to go to a space now and, you know, be certain that you're going to be safe. You're always going to be on edge. So I think it's going to have to, you know, work on their image again there as well, and just safety as a whole going into that area.
Hasina Gori, thanks for that update. She's been following that story of that drive-by shooting in Melville. Horrific. At least 2 people killed, around 8 people injured. Terrible story that's taking place, and we'll give you updates as those updates do come in.